On May 13, 2019, the world of ufology lost one of its greatest pioneers, Stanton Friedman. For over 50 years, Stanton was one of the most vocal researchers and authors of the UFO phenomena. A nuclear physicist, Stanton brought a breath of nuts and bolts scrutiny to a field full of charlatans. Stanton Friedman's long career in the subject has him being front and center during many of the major events regarding the UFO movement. He is widely credited with being the man to bring the Roswell UFO incident to the attention of the public. His career is also closely tied to the abduction of Betty and Barney Hill, the existence of Majestic 12, and to being critical of the Bob Lazar story. Since 1967, Stanton has lectured at more than 600 colleges and 100 professional groups in 50 U.S. states, 10 Canadian provinces, and 18 other countries. He has published more than 90 UFO papers and has appeared on hundreds of radio and TV programs. He has also provided written testimony to congressional hearings and appeared twice at the United Nations. So who is Stanton Friedman? Where did he come from? What were his works and views on the UFO phenomena? Let's find out and take a closer look at a man who will be dearly missed by everyone in the UFO community, Stanton Friedman.
Their response, engineering societies and so forth.
Positive or negative?
Oh, positive. I'm not a masochist. In over 500 lectures, and I come on real strong. The title of the lecture tonight's Flying Saucers Are Real.
All right.
And I mean it.
A few people within the governments have known that the planet has been visited.
There's something like 500 reports of UFO sightings. Not 500, and that's a tiny percentage of all those that have occurred.
Yes, would I call him a scientist? Yes.
Would you call Bob Lazar a scientist?
Maybe.
Oh, come on, man!
So I got hooked. It was intriguing. And because I was working on far out things, nuclear rockets, fission rockets, nuclear airplanes, fusion rockets, whatever, the technology aspect particularly seemed intriguing to me.
I point to the 2,400 plus landing trace cases, physical changes in the environment, collected from 65 countries. I point to the 3,200 cases in Project Blue Book Special Report 14, 20% of which couldn't be explained, and all the characteristics we attribute to flying saucers. I point to the 3,500 pilot sightings collected by a NASA scientist on the West Coast. I point to Bud Hopkins' 140 abductees with a waiting list of 200, and an enormous amount of data in the form of documents, some of them obtained from the government directly, some not so directly, clearly indicating that our planet is being visited, that some UFOs are alien spacecraft, and that we are indeed dealing with a cosmic Watergate.
Stanton Terry Friedman was born on July 29, 1934, in Elizabeth, New Jersey, during the height of the Great Depression. His father's side had immigrated from Lithuania, and his mother's side had immigrated from the Ukraine. As a child, he developed a love for reading the science fiction pulp stories of the 1940s, which turned into a passion for science at a young age. Stanton Friedman would go to Linden High School in New Jersey. He was a part of the debate team, where he learned the importance of understanding all aspects of a topic in order to properly debate it. Upon graduating high school, he was accepted into the University of Chicago's nuclear physics program, where he earned his bachelor's degree in 1955 and his master's degree in 1956. He became a member of the American Nuclear Society, the American Physical Society, and the American Institute of Aeronautics. Upon graduating, Stanton went to work at General Electric as a nuclear physicist in the Air Force-sponsored Nuclear Propulsion Department, where he would receive Q clearance for classified projects. During this time, Stanton remained an avid reader, and he would order books from Marlboro Books. In the summer of 1958, while ordering books, he needed to add one more book to an order he was placing to receive free shipping. He found the book, The Report on Unidentified Flying Objects, by Air Force Captain Edward J. Ruppelt, on sale, and added it to his order to receive the free shipping. This initial book did not convince Stanton fully, but he would go to the library and read more books on the UFO phenomena, as well as any declassified government documents he could get his hands on. Eventually, he would come to the conclusion that the phenomena is real and that the government is covering it up. Stanton would go on to work at Aerojet General Nucleonics, General Motors, Westinghouse, TRW Systems, and McDonnell Douglas, where he worked on advanced classified programs on nuclear aircraft, fission and fusion rockets, and compact nuclear power plants for space applications. He would stay interested in the UFO phenomena and started a local NICAP chapter in Pittsburgh with many of his Westinghouse co-workers. In 1968, he would give his first radio interview regarding the UFO phenomena on KDKA 1020 in Pittsburgh. One of his co-workers heard his radio interview and asked him to speak at Carnegie Mellon University, where her husband was a dean. This would be Stanton's first public lecture on the UFO phenomena. During this time, Stanton would also begin his own UFO research investigations into the phenomena. He read the book The Interrupted Journey, which was released in 1966 and recounted the alleged alien abduction of Betty and Barney Hill. Betty, a social worker, and Barney, a civil rights activist and postal worker, would be the first widely publicized account of a UFO abduction. They claim while driving late at night through the rural forest of New Hampshire, they encountered a large silent UFO that flew over their truck. The huge, silent craft hovered approximately 80 to 100 feet above the Hill's 1957 Chevrolet Bel Air and filled the entire field of view in the windshield. It reminded Barney of a huge pancake. Carrying his pistol in his pocket, Barney stepped away from the vehicle and moved closer to the object. Using binoculars, Barney claimed to have seen about 8 to 11 humanoid figures peering out of the craft's window, seeming to look at him in unison. They would then experience missing time, losing hours in what seems to have been minutes and coming to 30 miles away from where they last remembered being. On September 21st, 1961, Betty telephoned Pease Air Force Base to report their UFO encounter. On October 21st, Barney reported to NICAP investigator Walter Webb that the beings were somehow not human. Eventually, they would undergo separate, controversial, taped hypnotherapy sessions to try and recount what happened during their missing time.
And Betty said, "Look, there's a star moving." And I look and I see a star. And I see that this is not a satellite. Barney, that is not a plane. It is still following us. Try to maintain control so Betty cannot tell I am scared. God, I'm scared. It's all right. You can go right on, experience it. It will not hurt you now. I got to get my gun. I got my gun. All right. All right, that's all. I gotta get my gun. Go to sleep, Steve. You got to get now. Oh, you forgot it now. You've forgotten. And I walk out, and I walk across the road. There it is up there. Oh, God damn it. Calm down. Calm down, it's there, but you can see it, but it's not going to hurt you. Go on. They took me and carried me up this ramp. I was laying on the table, and my fly was open, and I thought, are they putting a cup around my private parts?
Under hypnotherapy, the Hills would recall both being operated on by these mysterious beings aboard their craft. Stanton Friedman would eventually meet with Betty and Barney Hill and would say they were pleasant people who seemed like they were telling the truth. Stanton would note that being an interracial couple in 1960s America was difficult as is, and no interracial couples would want to bring on any unwanted attention like this. Stanton got his hands on a star map that Betty Hill had allegedly drawn during a hypnotherapy session. She claims that during her abduction, she asked the beings where they were from, and they showed her on a map, which she later drew. The map appears to be a random placement of stars, but actually resembles the Zeta Reticuli binary star system. A statistical anomaly, Stanton would go on to publish the map as evidence that the Hills had obtained knowledge from their abduction, and he would speak publicly of this.
Despite the fact that Marjorie Fish tried thousands of different combinations of stars to try to match Betty's pattern, she was able to find one and only one pattern that matched angle for angle, line length for line length, what Betty had drawn. The star pattern makes sense from nearest star to nearest star to nearest star. The sun is part of the pattern. Quite remarkably, every one of the stars in the pattern is the right kind for planets and life. And all of the right kind of stars for planets and life in this volume of space are part of the pattern. The chance of that happening by accident, all the right kind and only the right kind for pattern stars, is 1 in several thousand. Perhaps most remarkably, this work tells us where one set of visitors originates. The base stars, Zeta 1 and Zeta 2 Reticuli, are a very special pair of stars.
Zeta 1 and Zeta 2 Reticuli are the closest to each other pair of stars suitable for planets and life in our entire neighborhood. Instead of being isolated from their neighbors as we are, Zeta 1 and Zeta 2 are 100 times closer to each other than we are to our nearest neighbor. It would not be surprising if space travel developed earlier between such close neighbors. Zeta 1 and 2 Reticuli are over 1 billion years older than Earth, clearly giving any beings living there a long evolutionary head start on us.
By the 1970s, Friedman had left full-time employment as a physicist to pursue the scientific investigation of UFOs. He began lecturing all over the country, speaking out about the realities of the UFO phenomena. Speaking at universities and to professional groups, he would compile all of the best evidence for the UFO phenomena and display them during his lectures. He began going on television to present this information as well, always remaining respectful even in the face of hostility. In 1979, Stanton appeared in his first documentary about the UFO phenomena, UFOs Are Real.
Increasingly, UFOs have become the subject of serious investigation by professional scientists. One of the 12 scientists to give evidence before the U.S. congressional hearings on UFOs is California nuclear physicist Stanton Friedman, who spent 14 years in private industry working extensively on classified government-sponsored projects such as this nuclear rocket engine and other advanced space systems. Since 1970, he is the only space scientist known to be devoting full time to UFOs.
After 21 years of study and investigation, I'm convinced that the evidence is simply overwhelming, that our planet Earth is being visited by intelligently controlled vehicles whose origin is off the Earth.
That same year, while lecturing in Louisiana and doing press in Baton Rouge, one of the television hosts who was interviewing Stanton told him something that would change his life forever. The interviewer told Stanton, "You know, the guy you really ought to talk to is Jesse Marcel." Stanton asked who that was, and the interviewer replied, "He handled wreckage of one of those saucers you're interested in while he was in the military." Stanton eventually found Jesse Marcel, who had been the base intelligence officer at Roswell, New Mexico in 1947 when an apparent UFO had crashed. It is worth noting that Roswell, New Mexico was home to the only nuclear-armed bomber squadron at the time, the same squadron that dropped the bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. In mid-1947, it was reported by the Army that a crashed disc had been recovered in the desert near Roswell, and the media at that time published the same.
Headline edition, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army. Army officers say the missile, found sometime last week, has been inspected at Roswell, New Mexico, and sent to Wright Field, Ohio, for further inspection.
A few days later, the Army redacted their statement saying it was a weather balloon, and the story was soon lost to history. Stanton Friedman helped reopen the case by interviewing Jesse Marcel, who claimed that there had been a cover-up and a UFO had crashed in Roswell, New Mexico. Through Marcel, Stanton would meet and interview many other alleged witnesses who corroborated his claims. Stanton would release the documentary Recollections of Roswell in 1992 and the book Crash at Corona in 1994, both making the claim that a UFO had crashed in Roswell, New Mexico, and the U.S. government had covered it up.
An unidentified aerial craft crashed on a ranch outside Corona, New Mexico, about 75 miles northwest of Roswell. The material recovered on the Brazil Ranch was highly unusual. The material was not from a weather balloon. The weather balloon explanation was a cover story. The discovery of the debris quickly got the attention of high-ranking officials in the military. The operation was highly classified. The media were intimidated by government officials. Civilians were threatened by the military. A craft was found at the Corona crash site. Bodies of aliens were found at the Corona site and were taken to the Roswell Army Airfield. A craft and aliens, both dead and alive, were found at the Plains of San Augustine crash site.
Around this same time, the UFO community began piecing together the existence of Majestic 12 through various allegedly leaked documents. Majestic 12 is a purported organization that appears in UFO conspiracy theories. The organization is claimed to be the code name of an alleged secret committee of scientists, military leaders, and government officials, formed in 1947 by an executive order by U.S. President Harry S. Truman to facilitate recovery and investigation of alien spacecraft. Many of the alleged documents were dispelled as fakes, however Stanton Friedman would analyze the documents himself. He came to the conclusion that while some were fake, key documents like the Eisenhower memo were authentic.
In researching his book on the Majestic 12 documents, Friedman meticulously verified every detail within the Eisenhower document. He investigated each supposed member of the group and found that they were the best and brightest military minds of the day, including Secretary of Defense James Forrestal, high-ranking Army, Navy, and Air Force officers, and the first 4 directors of Central Intelligence.
One of Friedman's last major contributions to the world of ufology was being critical of the Bob Lazar story. In 1989, Bob Lazar was interviewed anonymously and then released a video in which he claimed to have worked on reverse engineering of extraterrestrial technology at a site called S4, near the Area 51 test facility in Nevada. He further claims to have read U.S. government briefing documents that describe alien involvement in human affairs over the past 10,000 years. Lazar's claims resulted in bringing the Area 51 site to the attention of the public, popularizing the term in American culture. Stanton Friedman would investigate Lazar's claims of receiving degrees from MIT and Caltech. Friedman would find no records of Lazar at either school and was only able to find Lazar's high school records, which listed him as a below-average student. Lazar and his supporters claimed that the government erased his education records in an attempt to discredit him, and Stanton would remain one of the UFO community's biggest proponents of being wary when believing Lazar's story. For the remainder of his life, Stanton Friedman would continue to promote the UFO phenomena. He was one of the most vocal advocates of the phenomena and would become the face of the UFO community. Through his books, documentaries, podcasts, and television appearances, he would help educate a whole generation on the realities of the UFO phenomena and inspire other researchers to pursue answers themselves. Stanton Friedman passed away on May 13, 2019, at the age of 84 in his home of Toronto, Canada. Stanton, you were a huge influence on me, and I am sad that I never got the opportunity to meet you. Your legacy in the field of ufology will be felt for generations to come, and I hope that wherever you are, you have found the answers that you spent your life searching for. Rest in peace.
For the last 60 years, I've been trying to find out the truth. What I found was that people are very interested in this subject, but they're fearful of ridicule. That the reality is, most people believe in flying saucers, but they think most other people don't, and they don't want to admit it because it makes them subject to ridicule, it says here in small print. But things have changed, George, and I'm glad I've been around long enough to see a couple of important changes.